They call you into the office on a Tuesday. Not Monday, when the week still feels full of possibility. Tuesday, when the dust of the new week has settled and everyone's already locked back into the grind. Your manager is smiling, not the usual tight-lipped performance smile, but a warmer one. Deliberate, practiced. And before they even speak, something in your gut already knows this isn't about a problem. It's about an offer. We'd like to move you into a senior role, they say. And the room goes quiet in your head, not because you're surprised, but because you've been waiting for this. You've worked for it, stayed late, solved problems nobody asked you to solve, built relationships up and down the chain. And now, finally, they see it. They see you. Except they don't. Not really. And that's the part nobody ever talks about. Here's what the story never tells you. The smartest people in that building, the ones who've been there long enough to understand how the machine actually works, a surprising number of them say no. Not loudly. Not with drama. Quietly. Carefully. With a polite decline dressed up as gratitude. And they walk back to their desks, and they keep doing exactly what they were doing before. And the people around them think they're crazy. But they're not crazy. They're paying attention to something most people can't see until it's too late. Here's the first thing you need to understand. A promotion isn't a reward. It feels like one. It's designed to feel like one. The congratulations, the title change, the slight bump in pay, all of it triggers something real in your brain. Recognition, status, the sense that the effort meant something. But that emotional experience is not the same thing as the actual transaction that just happened. And those two things, the feeling and the reality, are not the same. What actually happened is this. The company just reclassified you. You were a resource they paid a certain amount to extract a certain level of output from. Now they've created a new category. Same person, more extraction, different label. The title is not a crown. It's a reallocation document. And the celebration you feel in that moment is the system working exactly as intended, because a celebrated employee doesn't ask hard questions. A celebrated employee is grateful. And gratitude in a corporate context is compliance with extra steps. This isn't cynicism. This is systems thinking. And the employees who refuse promotions have learned to think in systems. When they say we see your leadership potential, what they really mean is we need someone to absorb the pressure we can't distribute to executives. They need a human buffer. Someone close enough to the work to understand it, senior enough to be accountable for it, but junior enough to still be disposable if the numbers shift. That's not leadership. That's pressure management. And the title they hand you is not a seat at the table, it's a position between the table and the people who actually sit at it. Think about what changes the day after the promotion. The workload expands that parts expected. What's not expected is how the nature of the work changes. You stop doing the thing you were actually good at, the thing that made you visible in the first place, and you start managing the politics of the thing. You sit in more meetings. You write more justifications. You spend real cognitive energy on things that have nothing to do with why you were originally hired. And somewhere around month 3 or 4, you start to feel it, a low-grade erosion. Like you've been sanded down in ways you can't quite name. That erosion is identity loss. And it's one of the most underdiagnosed casualties of the modern workplace. You built a professional identity around a specific kind of competence. Maybe it was technical precision. Maybe it was creative execution. Maybe it was the ability to walk into a complex situation and immediately see what needed to happen. That identity gave you confidence. It gave you a reason to show up. And now, inside a senior role that wasn't designed with your actual strengths in mind, that identity starts to blur. You're doing work, but you're not doing your work. And the difference between those two things is the difference between function and meaning. The smartest employees in the room understand this intuitively. They've watched it happen to others. They've seen the person who was brilliant in their lane suddenly become mediocre at the level above it, not because they lost their ability, but because the job was never really about ability. It was about appetite. Specifically appetite for the politics, the pressure, and the particular kind of visibility that comes with being responsible for things you can't fully control. And that's a very specific psychological profile. It's not better or worse, but it is specific. And most people don't know their own profile until they're already inside the role they shouldn't have taken. Here's another thing the system never tells you. Visibility is a trap with two faces. There's the good kind where your work gets seen, where your ideas gain traction, where your reputation builds quietly and solidly over time. And then there's the other kind. The kind that comes with a senior title, where every failure is suddenly legible on the company record in ways it never was before. When you were an individual contributor and something went wrong, it was a team problem. When you're a senior manager and something goes wrong, it's a leadership problem. And that distinction between distributed blame and personal accountability changes how risk feels in your body. When they say this role comes with ownership, what they really mean is, this role comes with exposure. And exposure, without the actual authority to prevent the failures you'll be held accountable for, is not opportunity. It's liability dressed in a blazer. The employees who refuse promotions have done a very precise calculation, and it's not the one their peers assume they've done. People assume they are afraid of responsibility or lazy or don't have real ambition. But watch them closely. These are often the most productive people in the building. The ones whose output is quietly extraordinary. The ones whose institutional knowledge holds entire systems together. They are not refusing because they can't do more. They are refusing because they understand the actual cost of more, and they've decided it doesn't add up. They've looked at the senior employees above them and noticed something that most junior employees are too dazzled by the title to see. The misery is proportional to the level. Not always, but often enough to notice. The people carrying the most formal authority are frequently the most depleted. They leave the latest. They eat the worst. They talk about their weekends like people who haven't actually had one. And they say things like it comes with the territory in a tone that has long since given up pretending that's an acceptable arrangement. That's not leadership. That's a slow emergency wearing a calm face. Here's what nobody talks about in the conversation around ambition. There is a version of professional success that doesn't require you to become a different person. There is a version where you go deep instead of up, where you become so good at a specific thing that the system genuinely needs you in exactly the role you're in, where your leverage doesn't come from managing other people's work, but from being irreplaceable at your own. This is not settling. This is a strategy. And in a world that constantly conflates upward movement with forward movement, understanding the difference is one of the most valuable things you can know about yourself. The employees who refuse promotions have often arrived at a very uncomfortable realization. The corporate ladder is not a neutral object. It was designed by specific people for specific purposes, and the higher you climb, the more your priorities have to align with the people who built it. That alignment has a cost. It costs time. It costs energy. For some people it costs something harder to name: a quality of attention, a way of being present in your own life, a sense that the choices you're making are actually yours. When they say we want you to be part of the leadership team, what they really mean is, we need you to want what we want. Not because they are malicious, but because that's how organizations cohere. They need alignment at the top. And alignment over time doesn't just change what you do, it changes what you value. And what you value is not a small thing. What you value is the architecture of who you are. So before you say yes to the next offer, before the warm feeling of being chosen overrides the part of your brain that's trying to do the math, ask yourself some slow questions. Not the questions they want you to ask: am I ready? Do I deserve this? But the quieter ones, the ones that don't have easy answers. Ask yourself what you would be giving up, not what you'd be gaining. Ask yourself whose definition of success you're moving toward. Ask yourself whether the version of yourself that exists 3 years into that role is someone you'd actually want to spend time with. Ask yourself whether the people above you seem like they are living a life you want, or just holding a position you've been taught to want. These are not comfortable questions. The system is not designed to encourage them. The system is designed to make the next rung feel like the only logical next step. But logic and wisdom are not the same thing, and the difference between them in a career can be a decade of your life. The The smartest employees aren't refusing promotions because they don't care about their careers. They are refusing because they've thought about their careers more carefully than most. They've separated the symbol from the substance, the title from the actual experience of doing the work, the approval of the institution from the quieter, more durable approval of living inside a professional life that actually fits who they are. And maybe that's the hardest truth in all of this. The system will keep offering you the ladder. It will dress the offer in the language of recognition and potential and growth. And every time you feel the pull of that offer, you'll have to decide whether you're climbing toward something or whether you're just climbing because that's what you were told people like you do. The employees who say no have already answered that question. The question is whether you're ready to ask it.